Siok Hoon, welcome. I want to request you to share this amazing process that you have in place for driving great outcomes with the people who are watching this interview.
Well, Anjali, there are 3 steps to my process. The first step is to get help if you feel that you need to. Given my busy schedule, it is almost impossible for me to prepare for my speech all by myself. So I will always be sure to, seek help from a communication specialist or a coach if I feel that I need to. The second step to the process is obviously to get the job done. And to get the job done, typically I'll sit down with the person that I am getting help from and to share my thoughts with him or her. We interrogate each other on the thoughts, the messages, and then from there we then craft out really the key messages that we want the audience to take away. The third thing and the most important step to this process is practice. I will typically do it in front of the mirror, where I will look at myself as I deliver the speech, and I will also record it such that I will also listen to it. So I will do that repeatedly, looking at myself and listening to the recording until I feel that I am completely confident to be standing in front of the audience delivering the speech.
Wow, it's an intense process, and I'm not surprised because I have seen you do this over the years that I've known you. I want to talk to you about the step 1 of your process, which is actually knowing when you need help. Now, a lot of, especially the women in the corporate space, right? Or women who work, not just corporate, we are not good at that. We are not good at seeking help. So, does it come to your mind ever that because you're seeking help, you're weak in some way? Does it sort of cross your mind?
Not at all. I think that by getting help in areas that you feel that you need help to, you actually will achieve much better results. And by achieving better results, it gives you the confidence, to do more than what you think you can do. So to me, seeking help is not a sign of weakness. It's actually a necessity. And I would say, encourage everyone to get help if they need to, because the outcome is always better than if you were not to get help.
Right. Yeah, actually that's so true, right? Just to kind of know that it's a necessity and it's not a sign of weakness to get help. And you're a specialist in the thing that you're hired to do, and better communication just adds on to it. So just get help from someone because you're not a communication specialist, but somebody else can actually help you become better in that ways. But it's a great lesson for everybody who's watching that, when you feel like you need help or you are really determined to get your messages across, get help. But what I'm really interested in is that, how did this become important to you? Because you're fairly senior in your organization, and when we speak from that leadership position, whether we say it or not, there's always this sense of authority attached to that. So we come up on the stage, we deliver clear messages, and we expect everybody should get them. So I want to know, why is this whole piece of practicing, emotionally connecting and engaging apart from clear messages so important? When and how did this kind of become so important to you?
I think the first thing, it has to do with my mindset that I always want to achieve more than what is expected of me. And with this mindset in place, it will always, drive and inspire me to prepare, so that I feel that I'm ready to deliver some speech in front of the audience. Now, I still remember in 2010, when I was seconded to Australia to work, I was told 2 weeks into the job to deliver the financial results to the top 100 in the company. And this results is typically presented by my boss, who unfortunately had to be overseas. So he asked me to go about doing it on his behalf. And of course, to tell you the truth, at that time I was really, really nervous because first, it's my first 2 weeks in Australia, and being new to the country, being new to the job, and having to speak in front of a group of well-spoken Australians actually put me in a very nervous state. So again, my 3-step process: firstly, go and get help. And I did that. I actually asked for a coach to help me with public speaking. Secondly, get the job done. So as I was interrogating and sharing my thoughts with the coach, I asked her what would actually engage Australians the most. And she shared with me that Australians are most passionate about sports. So if you could put in some sports analogy into your speech, that will surely engage them. And so I decided that, I will not just deliver the content of the financial results, but I will turn the entire content into a sports story.
Right.
And I interjected it with a lot of sports analogy, and tried to deliver it, in a way that I feel, and use lingo that I feel that the Australians can relate to. And of course, the third and most important part of it is practice, right? In front of the mirror. That was the 20 times because I was still very new to the process. So I locked myself in my bedroom for an entire weekend and practiced in front of the mirror for 20 times. So when the day finally came, I still remember that my CEO introduced me, Siok Hoon, the Deputy CFO. And at that time, the audience was clapping very tentatively because they didn't know who I was. Right. And they were looking at me like, this girl from Singapore, how good can she be? After I finished my speech, the audience stood up on their feet and started to give me a standing ovation. And that made me really proud of myself. And as I walked back to my seat, I heard my phone beep. And when I picked it up, I saw a message from my boss back in Singapore saying that, hey, Siok Hoon, I heard that you did a great job back in Australia. So well done. And that made me truly happy. And this episode and several other examples thereafter where I was able to deliver my speeches confidently and receiving ovation from the audience make me even more convinced that the process that I have is something that I should follow through. Get help, get the job done, and practice.
Right.
Yeah.
How wonderful is this, because mostly people don't take this approach. We think, okay, we need to speak, we get our slides ready, and when the slides are ready, somehow we put a full stop to our preparation and we think we are ready. But it's not really that, right? Mm-hmm. There's a huge piece of engagement and practice that actually gives you the confidence. And from what I'm hearing from you, your confidence really comes from knowing that you have done whatever you need to do to be able to get there and deliver a remarkable message.
Yeah. Yes, I believe that it's important not just to know your content and deliver your content, but to deliver your content with conviction and to be able to engage the audience emotionally. Because only when you can do that, then they will remember your messages and they will be able to, give you better response, and the results will be so much more positive.
Wonderful. All right. So, we've heard about your amazing success and, your Stanford days and your work in Australia and all of that. I mean, sometimes when I talk to people in Singtel and I take your name, I'm yet to come across anybody who doesn't know who you are. So, you're very well known and everybody knows about the amazing things you have been doing, the projects you're leading. But I think I'm more interested in asking you a question about a failure. Have you ever had a failure?
Of course I have, Anjali. Who doesn't have failures?
Well, right? With the way I hear about you, it's just, it sort of never surfaces. So if you have had a failure, my question to you is that what happens in that moment? And how do you overcome that? Surely you overcome that. That is why you are where you are. So tell me, a failure hits, what does Siok Hoon do?
The first thing that one must remember is you should always not stress over things that you cannot control.
Give me an example.
Well, you cannot control how the audience will react. You cannot control, whether something unexpected will happen on the day, like the mic doesn't work or something doesn't work. But what you can control is how much practice you put into preparing for the speech, how much effort you exert, how much research you do, how you craft your messages. So I always focus on things that I can control, which are those that I just shared with you. And once you are committed to that process and, only focusing on the things that you can control, then the outcome really doesn't matter, because the process is more important than the outcome.
Why do you say that? Why do you say the process is more important than the outcome? Because a lot of us actually just say performance matters, outcomes matter, results matter. So why do you say that the process matters?
The process matters because when you put enough effort into the process, the outcome will come naturally.
Right. So what you're saying is that if the process is in place, the outcome has no option but to be great. And on the off chance, if it's not great, has that ever happened to you? Despite your efforts, the outcome has not been what you had intended for it to be?
Yeah, of course, you know, when I stand in front of the audience, sometimes I have good days, sometimes I have bad days. And when you have bad days, you just need to believe and know that you have spent enough effort preparing for it. Something unexpected happened, the response wasn't as good as what you would have imagined it to be. Learn from it and then move on and do better the next time.
Right. So I think what I'm hearing from you is what you're saying when you walk off that stage or walk off any meeting that you have spoken in, or a project you've led, and if the outcome hasn't fallen in place, the only voice that shouldn't be in our head is, oh, I could have done that, because you should have done everything that you need to do as a part of the process. So my next question to you is that you are called by your boss into his office and he tells you, Siok Hoon, we are promoting you and you're going to take over this team, and you have never worked in that sort of area ever before. The technical skills within that area just require such deep sort of knowledge. And my question to you is, when he gives you that promotion, offers you that promotion, would you take it or would you say no?
Of course I will take it, Anjali.
And wouldn't it freak you that you don't know anything about that area of expertise of that team that you have to take over?
Well, one can never be ready for a promotion. So I will spend the next 90 days listening and talking to people, including my boss, my peers, my team, what are the different expectations. And after you listen, then you start to you need to develop what you stand for. So you should be able to develop an identity of, after 2 years in the job, what do you want people to remember you for? So for example, when I took on the sales vice president role, I decided that one of my top mandate after listening to all the different inputs was to digitalize the sales process. So digitalization became a big push for me, and that appeared in all the messages that I carry to my staff, my team, that also translated into all the projects that I champion, such that when you carry this day in, day out, in 2 years' time or 3 years' time into the role, people will remember, what Siok Hoon stands for when they remember you as the sales VP. She stands for digitalization. Right. So be clear as to what is the identity you want to craft for yourself in 2 years, and prepare and get ready for it.
Right. So this is interesting for me, because firstly, what you're saying is that you can't stand in your boss's room and at the moment of being offered a promotion, figure out whether you're ready or you're not ready. You're never going to know whether you're ready or not ready without taking it. So ladies, if you're watching this, when you're offered a promotion, take it. And the second thing that you're saying is that, somehow relieve yourself of the pressure that as soon as you get into the role, you must start performing. You must take the first 90 days to really understand what's going on here, listen to people, understand the expectations. Because I think this whole pressure of performance for women comes from a place of insecurity, because we somehow feel our promotions are a favor that we have received, and we must perform from -1 day, not even actually starting the job. So contrary to that thought process, what you're really saying is take the first 90 days to really understand and be there. Don't think that you need to do something straight away. And I love that part that you've talked about, the identity, that you want to make sure that when you're done with that, in 2 years' time, what do you stand for in that particular role? That's a very interesting thing. So how do you shape that? Like, how do you decide what identity I want to form? Like, how does that thought process work for you?
So through listening to your boss, your peers, and your team, and getting deep into the job in the first 90 days, you'll be able to understand what will truly make you stand out and be different from your predecessor. Yeah, if you spend enough time talking, listening, and doing research, you'll be able to understand what my predecessor has done well and what are the opportunities. Then you turn the opportunities into something that you will want to do in the next 2 years, so that it will be a legacy that you leave behind that will be different from your predecessors.
Right. That's a really great piece of advice. And, I mean, I've had a huge career, corporate career behind me, but, it's making so much sense to me now that you're saying it, that just, think, listen, identify, work through it, create your legacy. And that's how you would work through this process. Okay, so Siok Hoon, I'm going to now put you into certain scenarios, and I'm really keen to hear from you. How would you respond to these scenarios? So scenario number 1, you're in a meeting room and you are saying something. And there's a gentleman in the same meeting room who has similar level of authority as you, and he interrupts. Now, he interrupts, and it's very obvious the interruption is not to enhance the message or to kind of add something of value, but it's an interruption just for the sake of it. Would you ignore it? Would you let it be? What would you do in that sort of a situation?
I would say, "Sir, please let me finish."
Okay, great. So all of you who are watching this interview, and if you are a woman, if you're in a meeting and you get interrupted, please develop this awareness and say, "Sir, let me just finish." This issue is so prevalent that it actually now has a name. It's called man-interrupting, when men interrupt women. There are 2 issues that we have here. 1, women don't even have an awareness that happens. 2, when they develop that awareness, they actually don't know what to do with it. I think you've just given them the license to say, "Sir, let me just finish." Okay, well, I'll move to the next scenario. The next scenario is you're in the same meeting room, and this time you say to your team, "For the next quarter, we have to really maximize our profit." And the same gentleman of a similar level of authority as you jumps in and says, "What actually Siok Hoon means is," and he starts to elaborate of what you are actually saying. So how would you deal with that sort of a scenario?
I would say, "That's exactly what I just said."
Right, okay. So if he takes your statement and repeats after you with an idea that he's maybe appropriating your statement or making it more meaningful, but he's actually not doing that, you would say, "That's exactly what I just said." Everybody who's watching this, please take note. You are allowed to say, "That is exactly what I just said." If you feel like a gentleman or a man actually says that, he tries to appropriate your statements, tries to take your statement and tries to, kind of say it exactly the same way that you said. So I'm going to ask you the last question for today's interview. So there are many women who would love to be like you, would love to get to the stage and the place that you've gotten to. We all start well, but something happens in the middle, and we women drop out of workforce. So I want to know from you is that if you had an opportunity to give an advice to women who have the aspiration to be like you, what would that advice be?
My advice would be, do not predetermine your potential and put the artificial glass ceiling around yourself. You are more capable than what you think. And I'm a living example of that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all these amazing insights about your process and your beliefs and, the advice that you have just given. You are our first guest on this show, and there's a reason why you are the first. I have personally been hugely inspired by you, and I think if the women who really are out there and have the aspiration to be successful in the workforce, then I think they will hugely benefit from this interview. And thank you for so open-heartedly sharing, and may we see many more women just like you, Siok Hoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anjali.